from St. Louis. You climbed the ladder of success. I've seen the flashy foreign cars that were parked out in front of your fancy address. You came a long way from St. Louis. You broke a lot of hearts between.
Breaking no hearts on the final day of August 2023, we hope. It's Bryan Styble with another edition of the Radioactive Take. Examining the culture, kicking it around perhaps, if it warrants it, and propagating conversation at the speed of light over WBQS News Talk Radio. A fictive radio station, but we're pretending it's real. Don't have to pretend about the news. It's wild enough as usual, not just the hurricane, although the pictures are turning out to be a lot more ravaging than I had expected. At first, we just thought it was a lot of flooding, or at least that was the first day. And that's the way these things often go. Hurricanes are slow motion things. You uncover misery as time goes on over a few days. Not like, well, earthquakes too. You know, somebody pulled out after 7 days under there or whatever. But some things are faster motion. Other things are more laid back. Well, I'm more laid back this time. No suit coat. But some information that I think will be of interest to you. So that's it for the hurricane. Good luck to all of them there throughout the state, not just here, the Carolinas too, and Georgia. CBS Evening News had something about some kids, and I think they may have even attributed it in part to COVID and all the rest of the lockdown, but they're lagging behind in mathematics. What the doing? Little sight gag for you there here on the Radioactive Take. From Xanadu in Florida, I didn't point out, and I should have. And what about Radioactive Seattle at gmail.com? That's where you can say that wasn't a sight gag. Your elbow just slipped off the chair, and you'd be right, and I'd be embarrassed. Well, I was embarrassed the first time the camera went on, and that was a month ago. But let's finish out August here and see what September has in store here in 2023. But this business about the mathematics thing, again, the story was calling it math. I always prefer the term mathematics for more than one reason. And I speak of this with a little expertise. I'm not much of a teacher, in terms of a public school teacher, although I've done that, but only on a very limited basis and just fill in. And that's not what I did. But I did for quite a few years in Seattle and before that in Albuquerque and in New Mexico there for the federal government. No Child Left Behind. Or I may have the words mixed up there, but it was George Walker Bush's program. Much ridiculed, but I felt I was doing my part by tutoring mathematics. A lot of different subjects, but principally math. That's what usually the kids, the middle school kids, that's the age group I was able to best relate to. The middle schoolers have, it seems, more problems with that than with history or English. Actually, they do have problems with English, but the parents want me to do the math thing. So I did. And that's why I've got some comments about that as the narrowcast continues here on the final day of August in 2023, a Thursday edition of the proceedings. And, I got that story off of the CBS Evening News with Nora O'Donnell, and I've been saying a lot of positive things about her because she's terrific usually, but I would have to say she embarrassed herself on the CBS Evening News this evening because it's not a bad story she was covering, and she didn't cover it badly. She just introduced it and came out of it badly, particularly introduced it badly. She said, this is my favorite story of the newscast. And you can do that on Entertainment Tonight, but not on the CBS Evening News. It's more the kind of thing that Lester Holt would do over there at NBC, and that's one of the reasons I say O'Donnell has has it over him in terms of excellence, but not when she got giddy. That's not too strong a word. I thought long and hard through the evening after she said it. Am I going to use that word? Yeah, I'm going to use that word. She was giddy about this story. And again, it's a good news story, a happy story. World record set in Nebraska, the Cornhusker state, where they've got the unicameral legislature there. And this did happen in Lincoln, the capital. We talk a lot about state capitals on the radioactive take, and this is another example, I guess. But what they were doing, it was two teams, and I think they're both Nebraska. I might be wrong about that, but they were certainly playing in the Cornhusker Stadium there, and with an attendance just a little north, I guess, of 92,000. They set a world record. Guinness Book is going to list it, I think, or at least they should. That's the way they were presenting the story, CBS was. And it's a world record, not for a volleyball game, although it may be that for that as well. It's a world record for any athletic event in which all the participants are women. And again, O'Donnell she even actually was kind of tapping the desk there at CBS Central for the news. And it's not New York, where David Muir at ABC and Lester Holt, of course, are. It's in Washington, D.C., and I thought that was a good move, and that's one of the reasons I favor the CBS Evening News, but I watch all three of them. But, again, she was giddy, and let the audience determine what is the best story of the night. And I'm sure most of the audience would have agreed with Nora O'Donnell on that. And I will even add my meager voice to that chorus. But that's not how you behave when you're in the anchor chair at the CBS Evening News, or at least it's not how Walter Cronkite would have ever behaved in that chair. And I hope not even Katie Couric. They were all in that chair. So that's the deal there. Did you see these pictures? Of Elvis? Well, they're not real pictures. They're AI. Another one of these deals. But Presley would have been 88 if he would have not died there in the bathroom at Graceland. And yeah, we talked about how I was at the funeral a couple of days later. Only a couple of days later. I thought it was going to be on the weekend. He died late on a Monday night or early on a Tuesday morning. The news broke Tuesday afternoon, and the funeral was on Thursday, not the weekend. And then Groucho Marx died on Friday, but nobody noticed. We talked about that previously on the radioactive take. You can find it here if you... did I say Tate? I was thinking of the gallery in London. It's the take. The radioactive take with me, Bryan Styble. At least I pronounced my name right. So anyway, Elvis has been portrayed by artificial intelligence, which is, I guess, smarter than natural intelligence that you and I hopefully have some of. And this is what they say he would have looked like today at age 88. That's not the best of the pictures. It's not the most dramatic. This could be the worst of the pictures. Nice microphone, though. And then you got your, that's supposedly Elvis Presley alive today. Or if my favorite theory of explaining all of these Elvis sightings, if my favorite theory is the case, which is that his identical twin brother, supposedly stillborn, Jesse Garin Presley, both of them born, I think it was a Tuesday, my favorite day of the week. I might be wrong about that, but I know it was January 8th, 1935. 120 years to the day of the Battle of New Orleans. We've talked about that before on the radioactive take. We're trying not to be redundant here. We're trying to keep it short. Maybe not sweet, but short. So we can't recover that territory. But you can if you want to find the earlier editions of the radioactive take, which I called the Tate. But again, that's a museum in London. I've never been there. I've been to London, but I didn't go to the Tate or Madame Tussauds. I bet you they got Elvis in wax up there. So anyway, these are the pictures. How seriously can you take that? But there is one picture. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get to it. I hope so. This picture, it reminds me of somebody else. It looks. Do I have a picture of him? I thought I had a picture of him somewhere. Maybe I don't. No, it wouldn't print out. That was the problem. This looks a lot like a guy who's still alive today and in music and in Nashville style music, a country artist by the name of Bill Anderson. And Bill Anderson, 85, I believe, today. He's still working. Saw him about a month or two ago. He wasn't performing, but he was giving some background on the Country Music Awards and its years in Nashville at the Ryman, I want to say. This was just a couple of months ago. Bill Anderson, and this is not Bill Anderson, but it looks to me a lot more like Bill Anderson than an artificially aged Presley at 88. Bill Anderson. Going to try to talk about him. Going to try to get to it, but I got some other stuff we're doing here at WBQS News Talk Radio for this Thursday edition, rounding out the eventful month of August. These other things may crowd out the Bill Anderson discussion. And you might say, country, listen to the music, don't discuss it. Well, he's worth discussing for more than one reason. And he's also worth performing. I do one of his tunes. In fact, that's what I want to tell you about. City Lights, it's called, and it's a standard that Bill Anderson wrote. And he wrote it in a very short amount of time on a rooftop in Georgia. And I'll tell you that story. I mean, you could read the story. It's been widely, not just written up in Wikipedia, but it's almost legendary in country music circles, because this song is, again, not just a song that a number of people have recorded and that Ray Price took, and he's in the Xanadu Hall of Fame. Ray Price is the late great Ray Price. He took it, I think, to number one on the country charts, maybe even a pop chart too. But I don't know about that. But I do know that it's more than just a song. It's a standard. Well, kind of like Blue Moon we were talking about just yesterday with the Blue Super Moon. We were talking about that song by Rodgers and Hart. And that's a standard. And so is City Lights by Bill Anderson, who, again, today pretty closely resembles this fictive Elvis Presley at 88. So I'll tell you the story of City Lights if we get to it. And when I say we, I mean me. It's a one-man band here. And I ain't much of a musician. Okay. I was telling you about this story on the CBS Evening News, and I don't even know the details of it. I looked at it, and I was going to play it back, but something else happened. I don't know. Nora O'Donnell smiled at me, I guess is what happened. Her eyes are something else. They really are. That's not the only reason I focus on her, but that's a good place to start. But I got the gist of the story, and that is young kids, they just can't handle math. And that's too bad. But I think the problem is it's the way it's taught. And I'm going to show you the way I would teach it to my students in Albuquerque. And middle schoolers all. I didn't do high school. And I tried young kids, but I used too many big words for them, I guess. I got along with them. I think they maybe liked me. Well, they didn't obviously dislike me, is what I'm trying to say. That's the best I can say about that. But there weren't that many of them. It was the middle schoolers, and I had a lot of middle schoolers between 2000. I guess 2000 is when I started in Albuquerque, and then this went all the way to 2009 up in Seattle. So I did this a lot, and one of the gigs was 5 days a week with the same middle schooler. And it was incredible. The mother said, I want you to act as Aristotle to her. But you know how Aristotle tutored the Alexander the Great? Well, my Maria, she's 10 years old, and I just want you to be Aristotle so she can be Maria the Great. Something like that. I mean, she was from, the mother is from, very much alive and very attractive Romanian woman. Lived under the Ceausescu regime. Remember when Mr. and Mrs. Ceausescu were tried and then executed about 20 minutes later by firing squad on Christmas Day? She was living there back then. And, well, actually, that's not exactly true. She escaped. She crawled underneath barbed wire with a couple others that she talked into doing this, into the Hungarian territory there, and escaped Romania. So I guess by the time they were executed, she was long gone and here in the States, and good for her. And I ended up tutoring her daughter for a number of years. And it was more mathematics than anything else. So I feel like I'm in a position to talk about this. And yeah, I know I got in trouble more than once in my commercial news talk radio career for talking about mathematics. Come on, Styble, your listeners, your audience, what dwindling numbers of them remain, don't want a math lesson. They want commercial news talk radio. And I said, well, but I wasn't doing a virtual blackboard up there, and well, I got a virtual blackboard here, actually. It's a whiteboard, but close enough. But no, I was just talking about important principles in mathematics, and I was highlighting, of course, Euler, but also René Descartes, Newton to some degree. He's more of a physicist, was more of a physicist than a mathematician, but he invented calculus, except so did Leibniz, the German, and they had quite a dispute over that. And there's a lot of other. Go back to Euclid for geometry. Go back to Pythagoras for geometry, but also for algebra. So that's what I would talk about on the radio in Detroit or Seattle. But that's not what I did with my middle school students. No, not even close. This is what I did. And I'm going to show you the first thing I would do with every student, and it didn't matter what grade they were in. And no, I didn't think of this on my own. I got this from a math teacher, Mr. Vaughn, in St. Louis, who does not know about the radioactive take, but maybe should. So maybe I'll call him up. He's still alive, and he's still doing the taxes for the other, from what I hear, he's still doing the taxes for other Lindbergh High School teachers. J. Harold Vaughn, my favorite teacher in my entire run at Lindbergh High School. And just think Mr. Vaughn is doing this, and he would have done it better, but I'll do my best. Anyway, we're talking about math's most important concept. You got that there? Okay. Now you say, wait a second, what's this? Oh, he's bringing back E again. Oh, man, that was painful. I don't know how long ago it was, a week, 2 weeks, whatever. But I explained what he gave a rough idea of what he is, and then tied it to Andrew Jackson, President Andrew Jackson. Why? Because Andrew Jackson was a two-term president. That's why he's on the $20 bill. Wouldn't have made it as a single-termer like Bush the senior. He's not on any bill. But he is on an airport. They named the big intercontinental airport in Houston after him, and that was good. And plus, it was great watching him at the end of his life there, watching the Houston Astros. They would always put him right behind home plate there. You could see him on TV, just like you're watching me on YouTube here on the radioactive take. Slightly bigger audience for the World Series. So anyway, I made a big deal about this. Two-term president, seventh president, and then he was elected in 1828. He was also reelected in 1832, but I don't think the next four decimal places of E equate to that. Otherwise, the guy that came up with this would have added that in there too. And I made a big deal about this, or probably in your mind too big a deal. And somebody did complain to me. Nobody cares about that. Nobody knows anything about Andrew Jackson. They're trying to take him off the bill anyway because he's a slaveholder. And you better get current. You better, you're stuck in the 19th century here. This is the 21st century. A lot of people were thinking, I suspect, and I know one person was because he told me as much. But here's where you're underestimating your radioactive buddy. Why? Because I wasn't going to do this E thing again. I just forgot to erase it when I struck the set. That's one of the things you do when you strike a set. And striking a set for people that aren't in showbiz means, tearing down I don't tear down the Manhattan Bridge. That would be quite a project. But I do take the set and move it out of the Batcave. And I also am supposed to erase the dry erase board. So let's do it right now. That was before. Now we're going to do some big, you decide whether it's big time math or not. But I promise you, it's math's most important concept. Although, again, I would rather call it mathematics is most important concept. Are you ready for it? Okay. I asked the young person, I did it with Maria, daughter of that Romanian woman. Camille is her name, the mother's name. I asked Maria, write for me the number 5. Now, this kid was in, I guess, 6th grade at the time, so this wasn't tough. I'm sure Alexander the Great could have done it for Aristotle as well. And what did she do? She wrote this. She didn't write left-handed like I do. Not many left-handed kids from Romania. I don't know that, but actually I kind of do. I talked to the mother about that. Yeah, it's few and far between, and she was right-handed, just like I'm left-handed. And that's what she wrote. It's what pretty much anybody would write. And I said, no. You didn't listen to me closely, Maria. I said, write the number 5. And she looked at me quizzically. And so we're just going to cross this out. Oh, now we'll use sophisticated eraser here. So that's wrong. Although we should keep it on there just to show graphically that that's not what we're talking about. But we are hitting the microphone, and if you do that on your second show in radio, you're fired. You can get away with the first show, but after that, no. But nobody to fire me here. One-man band. So... Okay, so 5, this is no good for 5. I said the number 5. And she was a sharp girl, still is, Maria is. Talked to her about a year ago, and she had it together. And so she knew about Roman numerals. Not surprisingly, she was Romanian, as in Roman. It's part of the Roman Empire. Interesting fact about the Romanian language. Blew my mind. Now, this Camellia woman knew this, but I had read it. I was researching her. I wanted to know a little about Romania besides the Christmas Day double execution. So I looked it up, and it said the thing about the Romanian language, it's what's known as a Romance language. Why? Because it's derived from Latin, one of the language of the various places in the Roman Empire. Developed into Spanish in Spain, developed into French in France, and into Italian, kind of evolved straight into Italian in Italy, of course. I mean, and are there any other Romance? Oh, Portuguese is a Romance language. Again, all of these from the Roman Empire has nothing to do with love. Valentine's Day has a lot to do with love, but Romance languages do not. Nor does the term the Romantic period with Blake and poets like that in the 1800s. That's not really love either. It's closer to it than the other thing. But the point is, a Romance language is just what has come out of Latin. And so, it turns out, as Romanian, it's a Romance language. But that's not what is interesting about it, at least to me. And, well, we'll see if you concur on this as I recharge here. And try to keep the headphones off the mic and try to keep the voice less gravelly. So here's the thing about the Romanian language. Blew my mind. It's far closer to Latin than any of the other Romance languages. And I don't know what the numbers are for Italian and Spanish and Portuguese and French and there might be a couple other ancillary Romance languages, and each one's got a number. I'm sure there's a number for it. I haven't researched this, but the metric is probably how many words have similar spellings as Latin or whatever. But into the 21st century now, French is very different than Latin, obviously. And English isn't a Romance language, but it does have a lot of borrowed words from Romance languages. As you know, a lot of words from French and a lot of words from Spanish, especially if you live in Florida or California or Arizona. But we're getting into the weeds here at WBQS News Talk Radio. So let's get to the finish line, and then I'll let you get back to your preparations for the Labor Day weekend, whatever they may be. So here's the thing about Romanian. It's 80%, fully 80% Latin. So if you would have done what the smart kids at my school or the wise kids at my school did, and that is take Latin. I took Spanish and did terribly. I'm still working on English, and I'm pushing 70. But I should have taken Latin, and it was available at Lindbergh High School. Mr. Vaughn didn't teach it. He was teaching algebra and calculus. But somebody taught it, and I should have been in that class because then I wouldn't be confused when I'm trying to say podium or podia. That came up when we were talking about the quiz shows that I was on. So I really regret not learning Latin. I'm trying to learn it in retrospect, but good luck, Styble. You're, again, still working on English. But if you know Latin, you got 80% of Romanian down. I thought that was interesting. More than interesting, actually. Fascinating would have been the appropriate word there. So then she writes the Roman numeral. Maria does. Because I said, come on, I need the number 5. Need you to write on the board here the number 5. And she gives me one of these. Not a bad try, but no. And I told you she was smart. Then she tried this. You probably do this when you're playing cribbage or something, if anybody still plays cribbage. She was thinking, but she didn't have the right idea yet. And that's what this is all about. It's about ideas. Eventually, and I wish I could tell you that she figured it out on her own, but I had to explain. I said, no. The mistake you're making is you're thinking that this symbol for the concept of fiveness is the number 5. It's not. The number 5 cannot be portrayed on this or any other board, white, black, or any color in the rainbow. Why? Because the number 5 is an idea expressing the quantity of fiveness as a hand that isn't missing a finger like Jerry Garcia's was, unfortunately. It was on his strumming hand. That's how he could play. An accident when he was a kid or something with a hatchet. It was his middle finger. I met him more than once. I met him twice, actually. But I didn't look at his hand. That would have been impolite. But I did shake his hand one of those 2 times. One of them. And I guess it would have been his right hand. I guess I shook the hand with the short finger. And I believe it was the middle finger, but I didn't look. But I did now just digress. So I'm explaining to her all the concepts that are associated with the number 5, or all the different things in our daily life that are associated with 5. And I'm sure I had a bunch of examples. I can't think of any of them right now, but you get the idea. The idea is that it's an idea. And if a youngster gets that as their first inkling of what math is, what they think math is plus or division. Oh, my God, don't do that square root thing. Oh, God, especially if it's a square root, the square root. Wouldn't be the square root. It'd be the 2 square roots, because since it's square, it'd be 2. If it was a cubic thing, there'd be 3 roots. But a square root has 2 answers. I think you know that. Dennis Prager doesn't, and he talks about that a lot. because he's always upset that the Oregon schools, he's confused. He doesn't understand what their problem is, and they got a problem out there. And whatever other states' education departments are implementing these policies, they got problems for sure. But Prager doesn't understand it, but I do, and I hope you will as well. I think you already do. This notion that a number is an idea, and if you can divorce yourself from thinking that this thing is a number when in fact it's a symbol representing an idea that can't be portrayed on any whiteboard or any other color of a board, well, then you're not going to have nearly the difficult time understanding things, not just like square root extractions, but sophisticated algebra, and even onwards and upwards into the realms of calculus, topology, and all kinds of other realms that collectively are what I'm thinking of when somebody says, well, what was your favorite subject in school? I said, mathematics. Well, middle school or senior or high school? Both. As long as it was algebra. Not a big one for geometry, but algebra, fantastic. You were going to say it's fun? Yeah, I was going to say that. Okay, well then, but you still interested in it? Yeah, I read books on advanced mathematics all the time. Couldn't do those calculations myself, but I understand the concepts because they're explained well. And I hope I explained this. I know I explained this business well to all the students I was privileged to tutor in Albuquerque and Seattle. And if I'm going to call this Camellia lady and see if she'll have young Maria, who's not young anymore at all. I think she's graduating college, and we'll acknowledge her up there in the evergreen state of Washington. What we used to up there, and they still do, call the other Washington, as opposed to the District of Columbia. So wanted to maybe get to talking about those quiz shows. The tapes were, and when I say we, I mean the staff. We got 2 associate producers now. They're both volunteers, and one of them, Sheila Friedman, right here in Florida. She's one by one transferring, and it's a major project. She's been working on it all week. One by one, she's transferring to something that the internet can understand technically, format. She's converting them. It's just old VHS tapes that I've been sitting on for many years. One's my loss on Jeopardy, that's in 1984, and then there's 5 of them, the challengers with Dick Clark, on the whole week. Now, I'm not going to tell you what happened there other than, well, obviously I was on a winning streak, but I'm not going to tell you anything. We'll go through them one at a time. And I'm doing it for public service purposes because as of yesterday, there were exactly 3 editions of this show. And it was only on for a couple of seasons, The Challengers with Dick Clark, and it was in syndication. But only 3 editions. I'm not going to call them episodes, although I think you probably could. Episode normally you use with a narrative, one day at a time, or Roseanne or whatever. Well, I guess Roseanne's no longer on Roseanne, is she? Well, anyway, when you're talking quiz shows and game shows, I like to say editions. Certainly if it's the Today Show you're talking about, and I talk about it all the time because I'm in love with that lefty Savannah Guthrie. Not so much Hoda Kotb, but we love you out there. I've been trying to persuade her just visually to leave her husband. I don't think it's going to happen. But so when you talk about the Today Show, call it an edition, and Savannah does. She wouldn't make that mistake. She doesn't make many mistakes. Well, she made a mistake by marrying that guy instead of me. That was a mistake, I will tell you that. But anyway, so these are editions of the Challengers, and they're editions that there's 5 of them with me, and there's 3, so we're almost doubling the amount. Well, no, there'll be 5 plus 3. Let's get the blackboard out here, the whiteboard out here, and add it up. There's 3 already on there, and then there's 5 that I'm on, and that's 8 total. So 8 is a lot more than 3. It's a little more than 2 times 3. So we're more than doubling the number of editions of the Challengers with Dick Clark that are going to be available to the whole world. Now you say, who cares? I don't care about current game shows, much less ones from 20, 30 years ago or something. Yeah, but game show collectors do. And that's not my crowd. I've told you before over WBQS, News Talk Radio, and quite emphatically, ladies and gentlemen, I've told you I don't do game shows. I only do quiz shows. 14 of them, 1-8. And you're going to see a number of my victories when we put these on, and that's just days away. But it's all thanks to associate producer Sheila Friedman. And I would say that's the long and the short of this edition of the Radioactive Take. We'd be flattered if you were a subscriber and maybe even give us a like. But I'm more interested in you giving us some viewership, as you're doing right now. And maybe, just maybe tomorrow, we'll have you in the audience as well to kick off September and the Labor Day weekend right here on WBQS News Talk Radio. A left-handed salute from Florida. See you tomorrow.